Hello, everyone. It's Cal Gould here with another series of interviews on individuals that have been involved in the sport of ball hockey from the early years, going back to the late 70s and early 80s. I have with me another individual that was involved in the sport in the early years. Can I ask you a question? Who am I speaking with and where are you from?
Thanks, Cal. It's Jeff Wildeboer, and I'm originally from Edmonton. I now reside in Stony Plain, Alberta.
Let me ask you this question. What are some of the early memories you have of playing unorganized ball hockey or street hockey when you were a child or a junior, like a juvenile? What memories do you have?
So, great question. That was one of our favorite sports, especially in the summer. In the winter, we played hockey, but played a lot of street hockey. And some of the favorite memories are, the old commercial where you hear car. You got to run and move the net because we were on a fairly busy street. So you move the net, move it back. And then just like, back in the days when you look at some of the players of hockey who we idolized. And so we were those players, like whether it was Dennis Potvin or whether it was, Wayne Gretzky or, Paul Coffey. But in the earlier years, when we first started the street hockey or playing street hockey was, who were the teams in the NHL, and we sort of idolized them and put our face to a name and go out the street and play, right? So it was awesome.
So you mentioned some other sports that you played. Can you tell me some organized sports that you played prior to getting involved with organized ball hockey, such as ice hockey or any other sports?
Yeah, I sort of a summer and winter sport kind of person. So every winter I played hockey. We got into sort of the bantam AA, bantam AAA, and then ended up playing junior hockey and college hockey. And then in the summer I played baseball, or, in the early years we were playing organized baseball. I did some soccer. That wasn't much for me. And then, as we got sort of towards the end of high school, or in high school, I ended up finding ball hockey with some buddies. And so we kind of fell in love with that. There was a bunch of, and it was more, I think, a collaborative, or just keeping the fellows together from high school. And some of the guys that have played very competitive hockey, some of them hadn't, but they were athletes. And we just kept hanging out playing ball hockey together.
Can I ask you, how did you join the ball hockey league that you first played in? Were you and by that, I mean, were you invited by friends? Did you answer a newspaper ad? How exactly did you get involved in the league?
Great question. And I think I mentioned these names before, and there's many, many names that we've already seen sort of through the player profile that you showed me that I know either playing hockey with and against. But two guys that I grew up in the community with were Raj and Almond Sabrawal, and they were awesome friends. And we used to go to the outdoor rink all the time and battle against each other. Raj was probably a couple of years older than I was, and Almond, I think, was the same age or maybe a couple of years older. And I'd go battle with them or against them at the outdoor rink. And then so one spring, they said, hey, why don't you come and try ball hockey and play ball hockey with us? So I did. And so I ended up started playing with them. And I honestly couldn't remember how many years I played with them, for a couple of years, I think. And then that's when the buddies from high school, we put our own team together.
How old were you when you first played in the league? And were the players that you were involved with in the team that you mentioned about the same age, older, younger? What age group were you?
Great question. And you asked if I got a good memory. I think it's a good memory, but short, Cal. But I was probably around, I would say, the 17, 18-year-old age mark. And I think when I first started with Raj and Almond, those guys, that team was a little bit older than I was, right? They were, like I said, Raj was a few years older. So they had some older players, but so I ended up going out and playing with them and had some fun with it. And then started talking to some of the buddies that, and I didn't organize the team that we started, but we some buddies, they took it on and we got a team together and put our own team in the league.
Do you remember what the name of that first team that you played on, or any other teams that you played on thereafter?
I don't, sorry. And you kind of mentioned, I think it was I was a suitcase in ball hockey, Cal. I got traded lots. I'm kidding. I played for lots of teams, but I know, and I'll tell you a funny story about when we first started, but I think the first year we started with the buddies from high school, we were in division either 2 or 3, but I think it was division 2. And we played for 2 years, I think. And we were quite, like, I think literally the first year we were either at the top of the league or won. And then the second year we won. So then they pushed us up to division 1 the third year. So we stayed together for a few years, but I actually don't remember the name of that team. One of the things that we did, and it was hilarious because, again, all buddies, we went to a pub over near Argyle one night after a game, ended up consuming copious amounts of beer and chicken wings. And the bar, literally, the first time we'd ever been there, sponsored us for the rest of the year. So they bought us jerseys and gave us deals on beer and chicken wings for the rest of the year. So I can't remember the name of that bar. It was just like I said, just off Argyle. And that was what our team name was.
I've heard similar stories to that in the past where sponsors, like mostly restaurants and bars that were sponsors, got involved because the whole team showed up. And when you have 15 to 20 players show up and consume that much, they're certainly willing to sponsor you. So I understand the story that you're mentioning. Let me ask you another question here. In comparison to other sports that you played, organized sports, what was your impression of the ball hockey organization that you were involved in?
I don't know that I compared the organization to anything else I played in, because to me it was just sort of a recreational, fun hobby in the summer. But the guys I played with, we were all bent the same way, or we were fairly competitive. So we went to the games and we went there with a purpose to win. And then after was to probably drink beer. So, but as for the organization, I think it was well run. I mean, there was good refs and all the rest, but I never had an issue with the league because we had a lot of good times. And so there was, nothing bad to say. I just don't remember how well organized it was per se, but I wasn't certainly a manager or coach. I was just a player. So I didn't pay attention to that.
So that was going to be my next question. Were you just a player? Did you get involved in any other way in the sport? You mentioned you weren't a coach or a manager, but did you get involved in any other way?
So if you said a few people have mentioned my name, they probably know what Jeff Wildeboer is all about. I'm fairly vocal. So I was never ever a coach per se. That was never my title on a game sheet, but I certainly had my input into the team strategy and game strategy when we played. So, take that for what it's worth. Again, not a coach, but I certainly would lend my opinion to what I thought we needed to do to be more successful.
There are numerous levels of play in the sport of ball hockey. They have different categorizations or references. The very first change in the levels of play were when they divided into Tier 1 and Tier 2. That was in 1987. Typically in the leagues in Alberta, Division 1 teams were considered Tier 1 and every team below Division 1 was considered Tier 2. What was your highest level that you played in ball hockey in regards to that?
Division 1 or Tier 1. I do know that we started with that team that I was talking about in Tier 2. And you mentioned that, and because I'll tell you about the very first game that we played in Div 1, because we were fairly successful for 2 years, so the league bumped us up. And I think our very first game was against the Nordiques, league game against the Nordiques, and I honestly don't think we touched the ball for the first half of the game. We thought we were studs in Division 2. We went to Division 1, and it was a completely different strategy on the game. So, but we did, towards the end of that year and further forward into different years, became fairly successful even in Div 1. But I played Div 1.
Did you continue to play Division 1 for many years, or did you move to different divisions afterwards?
No, I stayed in Division 1 and I played, and I honestly couldn't tell you, I don't recall how many years I played, but it was probably for a good 4 or 5, because I know the Playboys were very strong back then, and there was times we would lose out to them in the playoffs, and then they would invite me to go to nationals with them, right? Doug McCarthy and those guys.
So did you play in different provincials, regional, or national championships, and at what levels?
So provincial in Tier 2, and we won that the 1 year. And again, for the life of me, I can't remember the name of the team we were on. It was Troy Segan, Gary Volk, Ryan Tulik, and myself, and Kelly Dudra, and all those guys. And then a few of those guys ended up sort of stepping down or not playing much anymore. So we played Div 1. And then I was in, I think it was Calgary again with McCarthy and those guys in the Playboys in provincials, nationals with those guys.
Do you have any particular favorite memory of ball hockey, both personal and team-wise? In other words, do you have a favorite memory of something that you accomplished personally, or any favorite memory that you accomplished as part of a team?
I don't think I had anything personally that I accomplished that was, top of mind. But as a team or playing with some of these teams, like, again, Cal, when I look at sort of the league when we first started and some of the experience that was in the league and how quickly we got to a level to compete at the top end, that's what I liked. Again, with, the players that I played with, the Gary Volks, and I can go back to those, like, all of them. And then, it's funny, because I'm an old hockey guy. It doesn't matter what sport you play generally. on the floor or on the ice. You're going to battle against guys as hard as you can and whack and hack. But as soon as you're done and you go across the street to the pub, you buy each other a beer. And that's what I liked about ball hockey, because it was the same kind of thing, right? They're like, every team that you showed me, I see guys on there that I played literally ice hockey against at high levels. Then in the summer, we'd play ball hockey against each other. Like I said, we'd whack and hack and then go for beer and chicken wings after.
Quite indicative of how the sport is played at all levels. We might show that we don't have much respect for each other out there on the floor momentarily, but the moment the game is over, like you say, you're buying each other a beer. Let me ask you another question here. Are you still involved in ball hockey in any way?
No, I haven't. And the funny part is I see Doug McCarthy, who's a good friend, and I played, even the roller hockey for the Sled Dogs with Doug McCarthy here after ball hockey. And he was one of my mentors in ball hockey. He was just an amazing player. But he still plays and coaches, I think, and him and the captain that played was, can't remember, Steve or no, can't remember what his name is, but those guys still play. And then now Doug coaches sort of internationally for tournaments, so good on him. But no, I've not stayed involved with the game. I got two boys. They're 22 and 20 now. And so I got to a point where I was done college hockey. I started playing senior hockey, which I love. That's how I ended up moving to Stoney. And then as my kids started getting up in age, I started coaching both them. Like 1 year I'd coach one, and the other year I would assistant coach. And then in the summer, they're both high on lacrosse kids. My one kid's down near you. He's in North Carolina on a lacrosse scholarship. My other kid's at home. And so I didn't have time to play ball hockey anymore. I got into the family life and just sort of progressed with the kids in the family, right?
Do you have any other family members that are involved in the sport of ball hockey in any way?
So no. And when I say that, interestingly enough, my kids were hockey kids in the winter. And then in the summer, when they were younger, they played the baseball, they played the soccer. And then at about the peewee age level, found lacrosse, and they both fell in love with lacrosse. So my oldest, I think he got to a point where he maybe could have made midget AAA. He played midget AA in his first year of the REM 15 stuff, but then he elected to go play midget AA, play with his buddies, and kept playing lacrosse. And my younger guy played Bantam A 2 years in a row. The Bantam AA team and AAA team wanted him to play. He wanted to play Bantam A with his buddies, and he was focused on lacrosse and played lacrosse all summer, right? And then even in the winter, they had lacrosse drop-ins and stuff like that. So it was a combination of hockey and lacrosse for those guys. And where I'm going with that, interestingly enough, for kids, I still believe today in the hockey world, we push kids, like just at society, 24/7, 365 to play hockey, and I don't agree with it. So I would never let my kids play spring hockey. They had to find another sport. So they did multiple sports till they fell in love with lacrosse. And then so we're going with that, much like me way back when, I tried multiple sports, but I put the skates away in the summer. So I ended up playing ball hockey, which is good crossover, and then, pick the skates back up in the winter, right? So that's kind of the whole story about, but my boys never did get into ball hockey.
What advice would you give to someone that wants to play the sport of ball hockey?
Advice, keep your head up. I'm just joking. But, no, it's a great sport, right? And so it's like any sport. Do you want to play at a competitive level? Then get in shape and go play at the competitive level. Or if you want to play for fun, play at the right level, number one. And keep in mind, all these sports like ball hockey, there's no scholarships behind it. There's no money behind it. There's no whatever. So I'm not saying don't work hard at it and play hard at it, because there's nationals and all the rest. Like, it's a great sport, but put in perspective that, it's a sport that can lead you to friendships, can lead you to getting in shape. You can play at a high level, that win-lose as a team type perspective. But it's just sort of, to me, it's still a recreational sport. Maybe I'm undervaluing it, Cal, because it's great and it's been around a long time, but that's kind of my perspective on it.
If there is a person that, if they were here right now, that you would want to thank them personally for getting you involved in the sport of ball hockey, who would that be?
So there would be two. It'd be Raj, because he invited me out to his team when I was young, started playing with them. But one of the guys that I've always, like I said, just I battled against him on the ice in hockey and in ball hockey. But and there's many guys, but Doug McCarthy is a guy that just stands out. He's such a stand-up guy, and just his attitude and his commitment level to ball hockey. And when you were part of his team, like, you either to be committed or you wouldn't be a part of it. And he was just sort of a good mentor that way, right?
Now, As you know, ball hockey, as you were just mentioning earlier, it's gone up to different levels. There's now an international street and ball hockey federation that's been around since 1996. So there are world championships held at different levels: men's A, women's A. There's even a masters, men's masters, and that's not a measure of caliber of play, but that's a measure of age in which you can qualify to play for the team. So in other words, almost like a senior level, but not quite at senior level. So the sport has grown to there's been quite a growth internationally rather than just national wise. What do you hope to see or would like to see for the sport of ball hockey in the future of ball hockey, that is?
Well, to your point, I hope it continues to grow. And, I look at a couple things like my kids are older now and they're kind of on their own wallet, if you will. But any sport when they're growing up, from a kid perspective or a parent perspective, sports are expensive for your kids to play. Ball hockey is not that bad. You need a pair of runners, you need a hockey stick, and some gloves. So now I don't know what the league fees are like anymore and all the rest. And if you go to a pub and get some sponsors, right on. But so because of the price point to play ball hockey, and it is an exciting game. I'd love to see it continue to grow, and maybe who knows, just like in any other sport, maybe at some point it could become an Olympic sport, right? That'd be kind of cool for it, and fund it that way. But it's great that it is international and it's growing, and I hope it continues to grow that way.
Is there any other stories you wish to share, or any insights that you would like to share that I haven't asked you questions on?
No, I don't think so. It's funny because maybe my name would come up in the hockey world the same way it did in the ball hockey world, Cal, but in a good way, I hope. But I will say, back to the whole on the ice and then across the street to the pub, I hope that's how people would recognize Jeff Wildeboer when they hear this conversation. But I met so many people, so many friends through the sport, and my whole world, like in business, in sports, in relationships, has revolved around, I'll say hockey, but it's hockey and ball hockey. So everything that I sort of own in my life, or I have in my life, is a result of sort of my sports, but most importantly my sports relationships, and that is key to me. I loved it because, again, I got lots of friends that I grew up with, and they're still friends. Like I stay in touch with Volk, I stay in touch with McCarthy, all those kind of guys. And to your point, we're all over the world now, right? Everyone lives in different places. So that's kind of some of the stories that I just had a blast with them. Meeting these people, playing with these people, having fun with these people. And one final story I'll say is we were trying to be quick stewards in the game. And I can't remember if it was the Playboys or the Nordiques, but I recall when we were playing Division I, and we kind of got into a few games and stuff. And I don't even remember who it was. They would, if we were on a power play, their defenseman would get the ball behind the net. So, if you're on your feet, you're not as fast as on your skates. You'd run behind the net. Their defenseman would run in front of the net. You'd chase him, and he'd run all the way back around behind the net. And so literally you'd run in circles and almost we're 2 minutes out chasing this guy. So back to me being having some input, I'm going, why don't we do this? So we used to set it up where I would have the ball behind the net. And I think it had Volk in one corner, Tulik in the other corner. And we'd send somebody breaking down the floor, and I would run around the net until they started sending two guys at me. Then I would pass the ball to the corner. They'd send two guys over, and they'd pass it back to me. And we could kill 2 minutes off the net, but that wasn't from us. We just learned from watching other teams do that. And just things like that. Those are little stories, but it just drive teams nuts. But you kind of learn the game and learn the strategies behind it, and away you go, right? So it was good.
I like that story that you just told. It's like the floating blue line. When you go from ice hockey to playing ball hockey, you suddenly learn how to execute the blue line effectively. For the viewers that aren't familiar with the sport of ball hockey, we have what's referred to as the floating blue line, where once a team gains the zone, the blue line transitions immediately to the red line, so that the defending team must clear the red line to reset the zone, and the means the offense has the whole entire half of the arena to control the ball. So can you tell me of some strategies that you recall using the floating blue line to an advantage, or maybe it was a disadvantage sometimes?
No, to your point, it was bang on. Everyone plays the game differently, but we'd always kind of have that guy sitting right at the red line and fire the ball up. and you'd run across, and now we could all get on side and spread out and slow it down, right? So it was kind of a quick break. So we'd use it as to that advantage, but it wasn't run and gun to go on breakaways. It was to get the ball and get set up in the other team's zone, right? Whether it be on the power play or even just even strength, and then spread the ball out, right? We had lots of guys get run and shoot. So it was just a matter of how we executed that, right?
Yeah, because when you mentioned that going around the net, there were some advantages and disadvantages to the blue line, the floating blue line. The one disadvantage was there was no such thing as a two-line pass, as how the NHL is now, where you can do a two-line pass. In the years gone by, there was no such thing as a two-line pass. It was considered an offside back in the day. So in ball hockey, there was that advantage where you could, or sometimes it was a disadvantage. You could make that long lead pass to somebody literally at the other team's blue line and not be offside. So,
right.
Like I say, there's advantages and disadvantages. So I think some players knew that strategy. But when you play the whole season of ice hockey and then you have to switch to that mindset of a floating blue line, it just takes you a couple of games to get back into that transition, I guess you can call it.
You're probably right. It did take a few games, but once again, if you knew how to use that to your advantage, the point would be get that ball across the line and then bring it right back to the red line. So you set up, now you got the whole zone or half rink to kind of work, right? So
thank you very much for your time, Jeff.
You're welcome. Thank you.